selling.
It's not. I feel like you left out all the good stuff. Remind me, what happened with your brother again?
Yeah, that's actually why I came up here, to have a good cry and hopefully meet a wealthy neurosurgeon. So
here's the twist no one saw coming. Court filings just pulled back the curtain on a batch of texts and emails that Blake Lively's team says map a hush-hush online strategy, while Justin Baldoni's side flatly denies any smear. And right as that lands, the reporter at the center of a viral screenshot walks it back, saying his wording in a key message was wrong. So, which story survives when the receipts hit daylight? The covert plan that wasn't supposed to leave fingerprints, or the got it wrong correction that undercuts a pillar of the case? Stay with me, because the paper trail doesn't just raise eyebrows. It puts real money, reputations, and the whole 2026 showdown on the line. This didn't start with a headline. It started with filings. Blake Lively accused Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer team of serious misconduct and retaliation. Weeks later, Baldoni's side fired back with a massive countersuit. Saying the whole thing was a calculated reputational hit. Both camps came in heavy. Both promised receipts, and the docket swelled. Through winter and spring, motions piled up. Statements were quoted, and a judge tossed a chunk of the defamation claims, while leaving the door open on other disputes. That's where the tension really tightened, because a partial win doesn't settle a narrative. It creates a vacuum. And the faster that vacuum gets filled with texts, emails, declarations, the harder it is for either side to control the story. But that wasn't the whole story. A single screen-capped message turned into a talking point, a reporter's text that used the word assault. In filings, that message sat like a spark near dry kindling. Then came the walkback. In a sworn declaration, the reporter said his assault phrasing was wrong, that he never heard that word from the publicist he'd been talking to, and that the text was sloppy, not sinister. If that's true, a pillar supporting one reading of the case gets lighter. But another question pops up just as fast. If you remove that one word, what's left of the wider pattern that both sides keep pointing to? Who called whom? Who planted what? Who pushed which angle? And when? Because one misphrased message can shrink a claim, but it can't erase an entire calendar of calls, emails, and drafts. And what happened next would raise the stakes again. Attorneys' fees never trends on TikTok, but it decides real-world outcomes. If a judge decides a claim was brought in bad faith, the losing side can end up paying the other side's legal bill. That's not pocket change. That's pressure. So, when a publicist and a high-profile spouse push to recover fees, they're not just trying to win a headline. They're trying to move money. And when a judge unseals a batch of messages at the same time, both sides scramble to argue that those messages prove their version. One camp says, "See, this was coordinated." The other says, "No, that's normal PR." And a third thread keeps tugging at the original correction from the reporter. Fees aren't flashy, but they turn narrative risk into financial risk. And right behind that ledger argument sits a new pile of alleged receipts. Coverage describes language about monitoring online chatter, trying to shape story framing, and doing it with no fingerprints. Some numbers get quoted. Monthly figures for outside help totals over a quarter. The gist is simple. One side says the other didn't just defend itself. They engineered the conversation. But there's a catch you can't skip. These are allegations inside filings and media summaries. The strategist who gets named denies running a smear or puppet operation. He says the work was standard brand defense, the kind practically every big movie touches when the internet catches fire. That denial matters because the legal line between PR triage and orchestrated takedown isn't a vibe. It's about intent and execution. If discovery shows paid posts, fake personas, or routed accounts, that's one thing. If it shows crisis planning, press lists, talking points, and social listening, that's another. The difference could decide who pays what, if anyone pays at all. But an even bigger question is about perception. Juries and audiences don't read like lawyers. They feel timelines. They remember contradictions. They track who corrects themselves and who doubles down. If a witness flips a word months later, even with a good explanation, it creates a hitch in the brain. If emails read like strategy and not sabotage, that lands differently than if the same emails look like a script for a pile-on. And if any party looks like they strained the truth, even a little, that taste lingers. That's why both camps keep saying the other used spin. Because credibility isn't a paragraph in a brief. It's the through line. You can't coach it back once the audience stops believing you. Which is why, even after a partial dismissal, the pressure didn't fade. It moved. A court can toss defamation and still leave live wires. Interference claims, business fallout disputes, fee motions, and the practical stuff like who can subpoena whom and which communications count as privileged PR versus publishable receipts. That's where the fight over words like bad faith and malice start paying rent. One side argues, we acted on what we believed and we said so. The other says, belief isn't a shield if you are shaping a false narrative. That's why dates matter. Who said what before a key filing? Which quote appeared after a correction? Did a plan exist first and the message follow, or did the message erupt and the plan try to contain it? Those aren't just semantics. They're the difference between damage control and damage creation. And the answer may not come from a single document. It may come from the overlap of three: the text you saw, the email you didn't, and the invoice that ties them together. Here's the risk with high-stakes PR in a legal storm. The more you try to direct the movie, the faker the movie looks. If a reporter says, I got a word wrong, that's a bruise. If a strategist says, I did brand protection, not a tax, that's a plea for normalcy. If a publicist says, we never claimed X, and a message looks like it nodded at X, that's a thread the other side will pull until something snaps. Courts care about standards of proof. The public cares about patterns. Jurors sit somewhere between those two worlds, hearing terms like actual malice in the morning and going home to a feed that rewards outrage at night. In that space, small corrections can feel like big lies, and normal PR can smell like something worse, which is why the next stage isn't just about who's right. It's about who looks consistent. Expect more paper before you see a witness chair. Replies to fee motions. Arguments about what unsealed really covers. Requests to limit what comes in front of a jury. And keep an eye on how both teams talk outside the courthouse, now that the public has seen pieces of their playbooks. Every new message forces a choice: explain it, minimize it, or redirect away from it. That choice will tell you which side thinks the documents help them and which side is bracing for impact. The calendar points to a 2026 showdown, but this is already a reputational trial. Every upload, every quote, every clarification is a mini verdict with the audience. So here's the final thought. Maybe the question isn't whether a covert plan existed or a single word got mangled. Maybe it's simpler. Which version of events can survive contact with daylight consistently, repeatedly, without edits? If the documents really map a stealth strategy, the trail won't stop at one exhibit. If they don't, we'll see a lot of context and not much combustion. Either way, the fees fight is the pressure valve, because winning the story means nothing if you lose the bill. Drop your take below. Was this a reveal that changes the game, or a recycled bombshell that fizzles once you read the fine print? If you found this breakdown useful, tap like so it reaches more people, and hit subscribe. There's more coming as the filings keep dropping.